and welcome to A State Sports Desk. I'm your host Syed Naqvi, and in this segment, I'm joined by Stephen Pasco and Jacob Tesser. So today, in this segment, we are going to talk about the men's FIFA 2022 World Cup, and I would like to know you guys' opinion on it, and what do you think, which team is going to be the winner? You guys know that the group stages have already been started, and it's almost about to end. So, what is your opinion about the team that could come out as a winner?
The team I have is Brazil. I mean, we've gotten a good look at pretty much all of these teams, but Brazil's looked the most dominant on the defensive side of the ball. And then they were the betting favorites coming into this tournament, so that's going to draw some eyes. And then the thing that stood out to me were their players.
Yeah.
Completely stacked roster, completely through the bench too. They have 7 players on their roster that make over $200,000 a week, and 18 players that make over $100,000 a week, led by Neymar, currently injured. We don't know the severity of it, so that's something to keep your eyes on. But even without him out, they have plenty to make up for it.
So one interesting thing about Brazil is that those players that you're saying are the players that play mostly towards the forward side of the Brazil. But the defense of Brazil is what is not talked about recently. So during the group stages, Brazil has only had one chance that Lyson has saved. Otherwise, they haven't faced any of the chances during the defense side. So their defense is pretty strong. And if you see their bench is stacked with the players, star players right now. So I would agree to you that Brazil has a good chance of reaching the finals. What about you? What do you think about it?
I'm going to hop on that bandwagon, and we're going to go with France. I'm going to go with Mbappe, the good striker.
Yeah.
I feel like they score a lot of goals and see what they do.
So one interesting thing about France is that during the last 2 World Cups, the team who used to win the World Cup, like Germany and Spain, Italy, they were the teams that used to get out of from the World Cup during the group stages in the next World Cup. France is the only team in 3 World Cups who has qualified beyond group stage after winning a World Cup. So that's one interesting thing about France. But what do you think about Argentina? Like Argentina is like also a team full of players, and Messi is obviously playing his last World Cup. What do you think about Argentina?
Very big proportion of the population wants to see Messi at least get there. I'm one of those people. And he finally has a team that has a little bit more talent than he's seen in the past.
Yeah.
So he's in a situation where he doesn't have to go all-out carry mode.
Yeah.
So I feel like Argentina, they found themselves in an interesting situation, though, because they lost to Saudi Arabia in their very first opening match. So they pretty much need a win to qualify.
I would say that entire group is right now pretty much in the eyes of everyone, because any team could qualify. And as you said, that Saudi Arabia defeated Argentina. I think that is the one major reason why people have stopped backing up Argentina that much, because they were firstly thinking that Argentina is going to be one of the teams that easily will qualify for the finals. But after their first game and after even their recent performances, they haven't been on their best right now. So yeah, I would agree to you about Argentina. But do you want to see the final between Argentina and Portugal, Messi versus Ronaldo?
That would be...
What do you think about that as well?
I would watch that.
I think that's...
The world would watch
I think
that.
I think that's only in a perfect world setup. I feel like something's going to go wrong. There's always upsets, as we saw with KSA in the start. It's a wild stage out there. Anything could happen. I personally don't think it's going to happen, but it'd be fun.
And let's talk about USA now.
No.
Yes, let's talk about USA.
USA now. So what do you think about USA? Till where do you think USA can reach? Or do you see them going to the finals?
No. They're simply just... I don't
You're
think
honest
there's
about
enough
it, and
talent. As much as I'd like to see them do that, I don't think they have enough striking options. They only had a goal differential of 1, and that's because they beat Iran. Their other 2 games that they drew, they've only given up 1 goal on the other side. So that's a good thing that you can take away from this team. But if they're not able to score, like some of these teams that they're going to face, even in the first round, Netherlands, like it's going to be a really tough matchup for them, because eventually they're going to break through.
But you know what? I think that we should keep our hopes high, because the way they have performed so far, I really thought that they would lose to Iran, because Iran was a pretty strong side if you see. But they came upon them. And yeah, there's one thing that I could agree, that Pulisic is the player that is carrying on the USA team for now.
Oh, yeah.
But if he is not there, I think the team could collapse. I personally think that as well. So I would say that my favorite team right now in this World Cup is Brazil as well. And I want to see Brazil versus Argentina in the final, because it's like when you, like for example, in cricket, Pakistan and India are the 2 biggest clashes that the world sees. It's same like Brazil and Argentina. And the supporters of both those teams actually hate each other. That's the funny thing about it. And so the world would watch it. But let's talk about one of the controversies that gone through during this World Cup. That was the Ronaldo's goal, right? If you went through it. So what do you think? that goal Ronaldo's goal? Because he celebrated and everyone, and there was lots of memes followed by it as well. So what do you
Yes.
think about that?
There's too much technology these days that kind of show if he did or didn't touch it. The technology showed he did not. Even if it did, like, barely even graze his hair, they have sensors that can, like, kind of thorough that out. And even if it didn't catch it,
Yeah.
I think even if it had that little, it didn't have any impact if he did touch it. So I think the other guy should have been credited for the goal instead of Ronaldo.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on
Yeah, I mean, I agree. At the end of the day, like, who cares who scored the goal? I mean, it's a goal in the World Cup. It's like, it's one of the hardest things in the world to do, I feel like.
Yeah,
So
that's why that's why there were many controversies after that as well, because the way he celebrated that goal, he owned it completely.
Oh,
And I think it's not his fault as well, because when you are in that environment,
Oh,
playing that huge,
the
on
adrenaline.
this huge stage, things like that happen, and like we should also just give them a chance to let it be. So you talked about Brazil winning
Yes.
the World Cup. What do you think is the role of Neymar, because he has been injured right now?
Yes.
And because of him, like he's a great player, as you all know, and he can carry on the team with him. So what do you think his role could be? And do you think he could be back after, like they said that he could return after the group stages? So what do you think about that?
That'd be a very important return for him because the knockouts, there's no slip-ups like there in the group stage. You can lose one in the group stage and you can still qualify. And the knockouts, if you drop one game, you're gone.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's the captain of this team practically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's pretty much the face of Brazil, has been the face of Brazil.
Yeah.
Everyone recognizes that. And when you have such an important face just disappear, a team can become very vulnerable. And so
Yeah.
I think he's a centerpiece that kind of holds the team together.
Yeah, it's just like Ronaldo and Messi. Although their squads are filled with great players, but you need one player to stand out, a
Yeah.
player to lead throughout the games. And like you said, that you think that France is going to win the World Cup. Did you see today's match? France has lost to Tunisia 1-0.
I mean,
What do you think about that?
I think
Although they have qualified, I'm sorry I'm cutting you.
Yeah.
Although they have qualified, but what do you think about that?
I think they were just maybe some mental mess ups. Maybe they just got sloppy with their game. Maybe they were just not worried about it because they already qualified. Maybe they're giving their bench players some role.
But you know that if they are second in the group, they would face a stronger team from another group. And
Yeah.
if they're on top of the group, they will face the second strongest team of other groups. So I think that matters a lot. And I think France should, consider their... And also by the fact that Benzema, my favorite initially was France. But when I got to know that Benzema got injured and he went back to Madrid,
Yes.
I was like, now I would switch to Brazil because my favorite club is Real Madrid, and
Yeah.
I like players from Real Madrid playing for different countries. And because of Vinicius Junior playing for Brazil, I am like supporting Brazil right now. But in terms of, let's talk about the last four teams. Who do you think would be the last four teams in the semifinals right now?
Ooh, I'm not sure exactly how the group stages are going to officially lay out because we don't know
Yeah,
all
but
of the
as per the
knockouts.
squads and as
Yes.
per the,
I think you got to look at Spain. That's a team we haven't mentioned, but the European teams do very well in this
Yeah.
tournament as of recently. So Spain's one you got to keep your eyes on. I feel like this England is another one that you want to keep your eyes
Yeah.
on. And then I'm going to go with Argentina and Brazil. I think somebody's going to upset France somewhere along the lines. I just don't know who it's going to be. So I got two South American teams and then two European teams.
and what do you think?
All right, I got a
about-
crazy one for you. I'm going KSA.
Oh,
They're gonna make it. We're gonna see Australia sneak in there somehow.
Australia?
I don't know how they're gonna sneak in there. We're gonna have. Screw it. USA is gonna make it,
Yeah,
and obviously,
and then Argentina or France.
yeah.
Argentina and France. What about Germany? Germany has been
Oh, I
a very
forgot
strong
about
team.
Germany is at the bottom of their group right now. They
Yeah.
have to win their game if they want to qualify. So I don't want to really put something out there that crazy when they haven't even qualified yet.
Yeah.
So we got to keep our eyes on Germany because they still have, is it
So that
Costa Rica
entire
that
group
left?
right now, yeah,
Yes.
that entire group right now, Germany, Spain, they all have been very strong. But I personally think that the France and Brazil are good two strong teams that could easily make it to the semifinals. And depending on like the group stages and how the games are going to be set. But it was nice talking to you guys,
Yes.
and you guys had like good information that we all shared together today. And I hope you guys also had fun today. And thank you for joining us today. And we will be right back with more ASA Sports. Take care. Goodbye. This is your host, Syed Naqvi.
Here to deliver the latest news on A-State sports, ranging from football, basketball, baseball, and more.
I'm your host, Tristan Harlan, alongside your other host, Cooper Melder.
Red Wolf Roundtable is your local sports source.
Tune in to Red Wolf Roundtable to get your fix on sports talk and news.
ASU-TV, covering all your favorite sports. From Red Wolf Roundtable to Westside football and more, ASU-TV has you covered. Tune in now to ASU-TV for news and coverage on these sports and more.
Hello and welcome back to the A-State Sports Take. I'm your host, Caleb Gullahorn, and in this segment, I am joined by Marquise Esters and Ivan Rash. The topic for this segment is going to be which country produces the best professional athletes, and I'll go ahead and swing this to y'all.
So, to me, there's different sports. Like each country's have talented players everywhere. But for baseball purpose, I go with Dominican Republic because you got Robinson Cano, Pedro Martinez, you got David Ortiz, Nelson Cruz, who are true Hall of Famers that paved the way for most of these guys playing right now. And there's a lot more guys coming up from the minor leagues, AAA, like that's popping up in the major league. And it's like 80% of the Major League Baseball roster are Dominican Republic. And that's my choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that the Dominican Republic absolutely dominates the world of baseball. I mean, we've seen it for years now. They've produced the best of the best players and the guys who get paid the most as well. So, the Dominican Republic, I completely agree with your take that they pretty much run the world of baseball. And Ivan, what do you got to say?
Well, if I'm being honest about this matter, and call it cliche maybe, but I think the country that produces the best athletes overall is right here, the United States of America. I mean, I'm just stating the obvious here, but the United States is obsessed with sports. I mean, this is home to some of the best sporting organizations in the world. We got NFL, MLB, NBA, NASCAR. Yeah, lots of people watch those sports. And here's the question. Where do most of the athletes in these sports come from? The answer, right here at home. I mean, we got guys like Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Jimmy Johnson. They were born right here in our homeland. Yeah, I mean, sure, there are a lot of nice countries out there, and they produce some pretty good athletes, but the USA, well, I'd say it's probably the motherland of all sports. What do you guys think?
Well, when it comes to soccer, though, it's not even close. Right now, you see it in the World Cup right now, like, it's not even close. You got Brazil, who, to me, bringing out the most talent when it comes to soccer. And you got Spain, Argentina, all those teams that are really right ahead of the game besides what the United States have right now.
Okay, I can't disagree with you there, you know. I mean, soccer, well, it's probably not one of the state's strong points. I mean, we missed the last two World Cups, and this year, well, I think we might be a little bit off our game. Sure, we're doing okay right now, but I don't know how far we're going to make it into the FIFA World Cup. I'd say that out of all the teams in the series, we're probably the dark horse contender, arguably.
Yeah, I also get, like, United States do bring out great talent from, like, NBA, NFL, but you can't, there's fast over, like, back to baseball. You got other countries that can produce, like, a lot of great talent, like, even for Olympics. Usain Bolt, like, he's not from the United States. Like, he's been one of the best talent of all time.
He's like one of the greatest athletes to ever walk the planet. I mean, he's...
Because another thing is, like, Olympics, when it comes to Olympics also, yes, the United States have dominated, but the other countries produce really good talent.
Absolutely. And go back to like the NBA and stuff like that. You have maybe the top 3 players, definitely in the top 5 is going to be 3 Europeans or non-American players, at least, with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and Luka Doncic. I mean, those guys.
Oh, one of the all-time greats
Yeah,
right now. Like,
I mean, Luka from Slovenia, he's going to be very special in this league for a
I can
long
see
time.
with him. I can see he's gonna be, to me, he could be one of the faces of the NBA one day.
Only at 23 years old, and all the history he's already made. I mean, he just had his 51st career triple-double last night. Already his 5th 40-point triple-double of his young career. The sky is the limit for the Luka Doncic.
'Cause this is what makes sports great. Like, what makes sports great is everybody. You could come from anywhere, and you can still, if you can play for NBA, anybody can play. You got all types of countries who like come together and watch the NBA or even play, and like that speaks to testament of how well like the NBA is doing right now when it comes to diverse and all that.
Yeah, the only league really that I see that doesn't have a wide diversity of countries and stuff being represented in it is the NFL.
Yeah.
I think the NFL is mostly an American-dominated sport, but I mean that's pretty much the only sport that you're not going to have a wide range of nationality playing in it.
Okay, I get what you guys are saying about this whole international players in the teams, but let me ask you this, okay? You know how most of these guys, I'm pretty sure a lot of them, they train in the States, you know? So here's the skinny. People may come from different countries, but sometimes in America, well, that's where they train. So no matter what, America produces great athletes. Okay?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
There. You know, the American trainers taking the players in and molding them, making them better and everything. But I don't think we could take credit for that at all. I think that's still got to be their nationality, their country still produced that athlete.
Cause look at there's overseas before NBA or basketball was. There's overseas like a bunch of United States guys in a bunch of other countries got their own league, and you got a lot of places you can play. Like you got Greece, got basketball team, you got Spain, all of them. Like you got great players like Marcus Gasol. He is really talented. Play for Spain. Him and his brother Paul Gasol. Those are really one of the best NBA players that come out of Spain.
Dang, I was gonna say something. You were talking about the overseas players, and I blanked. Yeah.
Like that's one thing I realized. Like watching basketball wise, like yes, I love watching NBA, but there's a lot of big time games overseas. Like China got an NBA league, Taiwan, like all those countries, like they thrive in basketball wise.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it. You see guys come from overseas, and they come into the NBA a lot more polished than you would see an athlete who went and played a year at college and then went to the NBA. A guy that's playing overseas basketball is the second highest level of basketball. You can play college basketball, it doesn't even compare to playing overseas against the top competition because there's no like NCAA and stuff like that in overseas basketball. So I think basketball is a big thing where other countries really dominate the USA in terms of the overall production of the players. But that is all the time that we have for this segment. We will be right back with more A-State Sports Take right after this.
Here to deliver the latest news on A-State sports, ranging from football, basketball, baseball, and more.
I'm your host, Tristan Harlan, alongside your other host, Cooper Melder.
Red Wolf Roundtable is your local sports source.
Tune in to Red Wolf Roundtable to get your fix on sports talk and news.
ASU-TV, covering all your favorite sports. From Red Wolf Roundtable to Westside football and more, ASU-TV has you covered. Tune in now to ASU-TV for news and coverage on these sports and more.
Hello and welcome back to A-State Sports Take. I'm Austin Sweat, and in this segment, I'm joined by Jordan Moore and Caleb Gullhorn. And today we're going to be talking about who is the greatest NFL defensive player of all time. So I want to hear your guys' takes on this.
Yeah, for sure. I think before we get started, me and Caleb kind of talked about this a little bit beforehand, and I think that we absolutely have to change it from who is the greatest defensive player of all time to who is the second greatest of all time, because I think without a shadow of a doubt, Lawrence Taylor is the greatest defensive player of all time. I mean, naturally, he has to be. He's had he won an MVP, for goodness sake. Like, this guy is by far the greatest defensive player of all time. It's not even close. So I think a fair question is who is the second greatest defensive player of all time. I think that's where you can kind of start getting into the nitty-gritty of some of these players. So, Caleb, why don't you lead us off here?
And there is a very wide variety of players that you could pick right here. I think it's like Lawrence Taylor is obviously number one, and then there's like 4 spots that you got to go down just to get to number 2. That's how great Lawrence Taylor is. I mean, the gap is just monumental. So the guy that I'm going to pick is actually going to be Deion Sanders. And I want to get these stats right because I don't want to sound like a fool out here. But Deion Sanders, in his career, I'm just going to say his defensive stats because, I mean, you know, he did play offense in his career as well, return kickoff, return yards, and all of that. So in his career, he played in 157 games, and he had 53 interceptions for 1,331 yards and 9 touchdowns. And, I mean, you just look from what he did when he was playing in Atlanta. I mean, a young kid coming out of Florida State. I mean, everybody was talking about this kid. He was doing it all with the punt returns and with defense. I mean, he was solely taking over games and was literally talk of sports. I mean, and then he went to Dallas, and when he went to Dallas is really when things kind of took off for him. It's whenever he even had a season in Dallas when he had like 4 touchdowns on defense, 3 touchdowns with the punt and kickoff return games, and a touchdown on offense. So, I mean, we've never seen a player been able to dominate a game from all aspects like Deion Sanders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually I'm just gonna say this about Deion Sanders is I actually think his best years came whenever he was with San Francisco, covering Michael Irvin. I mean, that was that was specifically why they brought him in to San Francisco, was to do that. But let me talk about my player real quick. I'm gonna go with the guy that is probably the second greatest defensive end of all time, maybe defensive lineman. I'm gonna go with Reggie White here. I think that Reggie White, by far, if you look at the statistics, you might not know a lot about this guy, honestly. But whenever you look at what he's done and what he accomplished, I think it's by far, he's the second greatest of all time. Listen to some of these stats. So, of course, he had a brief stint in the USFL to begin his career, so that's not the greatest start of all time. But listen to this. His rookie season, he had 13 sacks in 13 games, which is pretty good. Then, his production from 1986 to 1988 is probably the best 3-year run of any defensive player in history. 57 sacks in 44 games, and he obviously was all-pro all 3 of those years, and he received a lot of his praise with the Packers here, won a Super Bowl, made another Super Bowl. He was a fantastic defensive lineman, and I think whenever you look at those lists, I mean, look at the way he impacted the game. He changed the game. Even if you don't know his name right off the top of your head, you look at his stats, you look at his games played, you look at his forced fumbles, you look at all that stuff, he is by far the second greatest defensive end of all time, and I think he's very well worthy of being the second greatest defensive player of all time.
Absolutely, and I mean, if you haven't heard that name, you definitely need to go and look up some highlights and find out, because my goodness, what a beast Reggie White was. It wasn't even close. I'm talking about a guy who could just come in and dominate and have complete control of a game and dictate how a football game goes, that's what Reggie White was.
Absolutely, he was. And then just talking about Deion Sanders for a second, I think that in terms of an argumentative point for Deion Sanders, I think that Deion does a lot of things really good. Like, he is probably the greatest man coverage player of all time. His pure athleticism, his speed, everything like that, Deion Sanders excelled at. But there were two things that he would tell coaches, that he would tell media, that he would tell everybody, and they were two pretty important things. Number one, he hated tackling. Deion Sanders hated tackling people. He did not want to do it, and that's why his tackle numbers are so much lower than you would come to expect from a premium back in the NFL. And then I think you've also got to look at the fact that he would tell his coaches on the sidelines that he was not going to play zone. He wanted to play man coverage because he had that athleticism, because he had that speed. He didn't want to go and he didn't want to play those zone-type plays. So I think that's where his biggest weaknesses come in, is that while he was phenomenal at man coverage, and while he was a great coverage back, I think that you've got to look at, he didn't have that versatility that some people want in a cornerback. So,
I mean, you absolutely right with that there. But even if he could have done that, if he would have been a better tackler and played in zone coverage, we might have a different conversation to start this whole segment.
Oh, yeah.
And not even have to say, let's just go straight to number two. Because if Deion Sanders wanted to do those two things, forget best defensive player. Well, we're talking about the greatest player of all time. If Deion Sanders could do those two things.
Especially with his all-around skills. I mean, you've told it yourself with how he did in special teams and how he's done even somewhat offensively. I think that could have been a huge factor in that all-time, a very well all-arounder, because of how great that is. That could have very well built in that greatest player. But I think, as Jordan's saying, those factors that he's saying, I don't want to tackle, I don't want to play zone. I mean, there are things you don't want to do, but as a player for a team, you're going to have to do it. And I think those are very limiting factors that you have to look at in this player, because that's a mentality thing too, that if he has to overcome, and if he were to do that, then yes, it was a very different argument.
Yeah, and that being said, I do think that Deion is one of the greatest of all time. Like, I'm not like taking shots on Deion at all. I mean, he's a phenomenal player. He's a phenomenal personality. He's a great coach too. A lot of people were looking for him to get a new job, but it looks like he's probably going to stay. But
which is great. Him leaving Jackson State would be a prime time disaster.
It would. He turned that program completely around. So, I mean, he's got that going for him too. But, and I definitely think he's one of the greatest. But, I think just looking at those two aspects, you've got to be able to be versatile. And I think that's the number one thing that turns me off of Deion Sanders. But, I mean, you talked about his offensive capabilities too. Like you talked about his return touchdowns, all that stuff too. And that's incredible.
Here, I'll get the numbers right. For his career, in the return game, he returned 212 kicks for 2,199 yards and 6 touchdowns, which that's 10.4 yards per return, which I don't know if you know how difficult that is, but you have at least 9 dudes flying at you full speed coming to tackle you, and you're still getting 10 yards. Deion Sanders is just an incredible athlete, and he played baseball too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
On top of that, he played baseball as well.
I mean, he is the epitome of an athlete, but I think that whenever you look at who is the greatest of all time, being an athlete isn't the only thing that matters. You look at, who's the greatest NFL player of all time? A lot of people will say Tom Brady.
And he's not even close to being a good athlete.
No, he's not. He's not a great athlete. Like, Tom Brady can sling the rock, but he's not a phenomenal athlete. He's not the fastest. He can't jump the highest. He can't do all those things, but he's still quite possibly the greatest NFL player of all time, even though that's such a tough spot to land. Right. I think that whenever you look truly at defensive players, I think that Deion Sanders is definitely in the top 5, but I think that Reggie White is just that much greater. He was so dominant. He was that guy that people were, we talk about Lawrence Taylor and how people would get how people would triple, quadruple team this guy just to try and stop him. I mean, White was another guy just like that. People were triple teaming him, trying to get him to stop, getting in on the offensive line. He had a lot of pass deflections. He was extremely versatile. He was fast. He was strong. I think that without a doubt, he's right up there. And I think that's just kind of what happens. If you can get a really great pass rusher, they can be that guy. And we're seeing that in today's NFL too, with TJ Watt, with Micah Parsons, with guys like that who are phenomenal pass rushers and who are winning Defensive Player of the Year every single year, because that's just how highly regarded these defensive ends and defensive linemen really are.
Especially the hybrid, the linebacker / Ed Rogers, which is what Lawrence was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those kind of guys are always going to be the best defensive players.
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at standing out at line has always been a big deal because those are often places that are way overlooked. Like a lot of people, the defensive line is in a habit of where they can be seen a lot more, but still, you're often overshadowed by the safeties, by the people making the interceptions, these big outside backers, big linebackers, and just having that standoutness as the line, I think, just shows a testament to how great he plays.
Absolutely.
But it looks like that's going to be about all the time we have today. That's all for this segment. We are going to be right back with more A-State Sports Take after this.
Here to deliver the latest news on A-State sports, ranging from football, basketball, baseball, and more.
I'm your host, Tristan Harlan, alongside your other host, Cooper Melder.
Red Wolf Roundtable is your local sports source.
Tune in to Red Wolf Roundtable to get your fix on sports talk and news.
ASU-TV, covering all your favorite sports. From Red Wolf Roundtable to Westside football and more, ASU-TV has you covered. Tune in now to ASU-TV for news and coverage on these sports and more.
A-State Sports Take. I'm Ivan Rash. In this segment, I'm joined by Marquise Esters and S. Easton John. The topic for this segment is, who's the greatest sportscaster of all time? All right, fellas, what are your thoughts?
Oh, so the person I chose, it's got to be Joe Buck. Like, he did a little bit.
Joe Buck?
Yeah.
All right. Why is that?
'Cause, like, listening to him, every time I listen to him, yeah, he's not really, makes mistakes all the time, but he's one you could get behind because his storytelling.
It's not he makes mistakes. It's just he makes it sound. He just sounds funny. But continue.
But he was also a Sports Emmy Award for Outstanding Sports Personality in his career, and he's following in the footsteps of his father, who was also a sportscaster.
Yeah, I mean, it was well-deserved. He did football and baseball. The only bone I have to pick with Joe Buck is when he commentated when the Royals and the Mets were in the World Series, he was so monotone every single time the Royals would do something good, and then when the Mets would do something good, he was so happy and excited and sounded enthusiastic. But Alex Gordon hit a shot to center field to tie the game in the 9th inning, and Joe Buck sounded like his puppy just died. Like, come on, show some enthusiasm. Like, he just tied the game.
Well, let's be honest, though. When's the last time Royals actually done something in a long time?
Who?
The Royals.
The Royals? I don't know. We don't know. That ain't the segment.
I know.
That is not the segment.
How you get excited about calling the Royals game?
We won the World Series. Let's move on. My favorite sportscaster of all time is is John Madden. John Madden is my #1 favorite, and thank you, Tristan Harlan, for reminding me who he was. But I knew who he was, but he popped that in my brain. I was like, oh my gosh, of course. But yeah, John Madden, he would be so funny on TV. Even though I didn't watch him, I'd watch his YouTube highlights, and My dad would always tell me stories about him and what he'd do on TV that was not by the book.
Oh,
But yeah, so I mean, he would be drawing lines every single way on the screen, and he'd be drawing, and it was kind of funny. The one clip that stands out to me is the bucket scene where he's like, well, you got a papa bucket and you got a mama bucket, and then they made a baby bucket. So that was just, it was funny with the Gatorade. And then also, he makes a tradition with the turducken on Thanksgiving on Fox Sport, or was it, I think it was Fox. It was, or is it NBC? Whatever the case. NBC, it was, because Vikings and Patriots played on NBC on Thanksgiving. But yeah, I mean, the turducken scene is the most historic thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's how people found out about a turducken, I feel like, and he made it like popular and stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's the reason why we have turducken, is because John Madden said it on TV. So yeah, Ivan, what do you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
We've been talking here and we haven't heard from you. What do you think?
Well, I think you bring up some pretty valid points about John Madden. You know, he does sound like a pretty interesting personality. But if you guys are looking for who I think is the best sportscaster of all time, well, I'm going to be real here. Whenever I watch other sports, I don't really pay much attention to who's commentating. But NASCAR, well, that's kind of another story. So I'm going to give you an honest answer here. Darrell Waltrip.
I don't know who that is. Who is that? Who's Dale Waltrip? Is he a NASCAR commentator?
Was before he retired.
Was before, okay.
Say, have you ever watched the movie Cars?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. We don't even got to talk about it. That's my #1 favorite Disney movie of all time. Ivan, you have me hooked.
Right. Well, Darrell Waltrip was in that movie. He voiced a car version of himself named Darrell Cartrip. I'm sure that name's probably more familiar
I didn't know that.
I know that.
Guys.
I didn't know that. That's honestly.
And while I'm giving voice actor facts, the character Bob Cutlass was voiced by Bob Costas.
Oh, bro, my Cars perception is just flipped. But that is interesting. But so, is there anything else? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
We're kind of getting off topic.
Yeah, we're talking about cars now.
Back to Waltrip, okay? Before he was a NASCAR commentator, Darrell Waltrip was a driver in the series, won a few championships and also a Daytona 500. And you see, well, he was after he retired after the 2000 Cup Series, he became a commentator for Fox Sports. And let me tell you, he was one of the best.
He was.
I mean, yeah, he had this little catchphrase whenever he started a race. Whenever the drivers were driving towards the starting line to take the first lap, he would always say, "Boogity, boogity, boogity."
Let's go
racing, boys.
That's him?
I didn't know that.
Okay, that's it. Okay.
Okay.
Great. That's a great pick. Honestly, I loved NASCAR when I was a kid. And whenever they'd say that, or I didn't know who it was because I was like 7 at the time, but I always liked him saying the boogity boogity or something because it got me fired up. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think that was the whole point of the line, to get people pumped and ready for the race.
Yeah, exactly. So, Marquise, I'm going to have you go again because...
Back to Joe Madden.
Or Joe Buck, sorry.
Well, Joe Buck, but you can't fact that his career, he done a lot of good things.
Oh, yeah. Even though he might sound like
he might be biased most times, but you gotta know he's what he do. He's really good at what he do. The storytelling is pouring on most games, and you can't really go wrong with that.
Yeah, I can't go wrong with that. I mean, we're talking a lot of stuff about Joe Buck, but I think he's a fantastic sportscaster. He tells a story fantastic, and even though he sounds kind of silly sometimes, but it's just, I mean, John Madden's on another spectrum of.
Oh yeah, he did a little bit of everything.
Yes, I mean him passing this year was pretty it was a big hit on the NFL.
It was big.
Yeah, it was. It actually inspired a lot of people to start commentating, and his style went from being a coach and then now being a sportscaster, having the bus and all that stuff, and having all these cool things. I mean, I watched the documentary about John Madden, and it was a documentary that I like sat down and watched and took in information. Like sometimes with documentaries, I kind of doze off and stuff.
Yeah.
But this one was like, it was so interesting because there were so many great like moments that he had with the bus and the Brett Favre story. I don't want to say the Brett Favre story, but if you want to look that up, you can. But yeah, I think John Madden is a fantastic sportscaster.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we're getting the hand signal,
Yes.
so we gotta wrap.
Yes, I believe that's all the time we have for this segment. We'll be right back with more A-State Sports Take right after this.
Here to deliver the latest news on A-State sports, ranging from football, basketball, baseball, and more.
I'm your host, Tristan Harlan, alongside your other host, Cooper Melder.
Red Wolf Roundtable is your local sports source.
Tune in to Red Wolf Roundtable to get your fix on sports talk and news.
ASU-TV, covering all your favorite sports. From Red Wolf Roundtable to West Side football and more, ASU-TV has you covered. Tune in now to ASU-TV for news and coverage on these sports and more.
Hello and welcome back to the A-State Sports Take. I'm Ella Jane Britt, and in this segment, I'm joined by Marquise Esters and James Lowry. On the topic for this segment today, who is the ultimate sports GOAT?
It's a no-brainer. It gotta be Kobe Bryant, the greatest of all time. Look what he was able to do with the Lakers. He won with another superstar. He won without a superstar. Like who are you gonna get number one?
No, he did not.
He won by himself.
With who?
He won with Shaquille O'Neal. He won with Pau Gasol, and he also won it without.
Gasol was a superstar at the time.
When
At
you
that
were-
time in his career, when
At
he
that
left
point-
Memphis, a team that was mediocre to a team that was atop of the conference. Pau Gasol was very much a superstar.
Oh,
on
then
that
who
Grizzlies
you got?
team.
Who you got? In
The ultimate Michael Jordan.
Can't go wrong with that, but like,
The man who
can
made
he really be number one? Cause like,
Yeah.
he always had another superstar with him.
6 championships.
With Scottie Pippen, and like, how many would he won without Scottie Pippen by his side? How many?
Do you feel like Michael Jordan set the standard for the future basketball players such as Kobe and then to LeBron and different things like that?
Oh,
do you
yeah,
feel like
no-brainer,
Michael
yeah.
Jordan, who is, in my opinion, probably the ultimate. And then he, like I said, he set records.
Oh, yeah, he set the
and,
bar.
Set the bar practically for all of those further basketball players.
Yeah, he had Pippen and Rodman and, Steve Kerr and those guys, John Paxson. But it takes a team. That's why they won, I feel like. Yes, they had Michael Jordan, but the rest of those guys knew their roles. And that's why they won all those championships. It wasn't because they were very much better than the teams that they beat, but it was because those role players knew their roles.
True.
Because, in my opinion, both of those times that they beat the Utah Jazz, especially the last championship they won, the Jazz should have won, in my opinion. Charles
down.
Barkley's Phoenix Suns should have won.
Hands down, I should have won that.
But
Jordan
it was just Jordan and the team was better. And they found ways to win the games. So,
But one thing that was a mistake that I think Jordan made is sign with the Wizards, though. In his career, that was one mistake he ever made. Because he really didn't have help.
How y'all are seeing it, I feel like y'all are seeing it very like shooting wise, often like I've always heard offense scores points, defense wins games. Kind of going back to the Chicago Bulls, Dennis Rodman I feel like has placed a very, very big bar for the defensive play and for rebounding. So how do y'all feel about the defensive aspect of us GOAT?
that is a
That's a very good question because like
And like James was saying, everybody on that Chicago Bulls, that 5 well-known team that played, Dennis Rodman knew his place there. He was there for rebounding, blocking, all of the defensive aspects.
Dennis Rodman was annoying, but he was like that pest that you didn't want to play against, but always one on his team. Is like, I think that's what helped Jordan mostly helped him become the player he was, because like guys that helped him, like Scott Pippen, what he was able to do with the Chicago, like Dennis Rodman on the defensive side. Like, first, like you said earlier, Kobe Bryant had Pau Gasol who played his role. And like Dennis Rodman was on the Lakers at one point, and his defensive play style helped the Lakers at one point. It's like they both had a team surrounding them that could help them win, but like it's really, I can see like Jordan's. Don't get me wrong, he's one of the greatest players of all time who set the bar for like guys like Stephen Curry, LeBron, Giannis, all those guys. But you gotta put Kobe on that conversation too, because what he was able to do.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. But back to your question, it's so many defensive players that come to mind. If I would just have to choose a GOAT, I'm going way back, Bill Russell.
Oh yeah.
So.
Or you also could go with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like,
See, when I think Kareem was a defensive player, but I mean that's the greatest scorer of all time. I mean he's literally the top of the list.
Or you go Larry Bird, who is a phenomenal scorer. Like you really couldn't stop him from scoring wise. Magic Johnson, like, he's one of a kind of point guard where you don't see that really now these days. Like, you got so many players that be like the GOAT. There's like a lot of them. You got like Wilt Chamberlain, all of them, like those guys.
I feel like you could also separate the ultimate sports GOAT out into an offensive aspect and a defensive aspect, because almost like going into like football and things like that, like you have people who are strictly there to play offense or defense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when it comes, you can't leave her out. Well, they're sisters, Venus and Serena.
Oh yeah.
You can't leave them out. There's like, they changed the tennis world.
Or for like the WNBA, you got Lisa Leslie for the Sparks, who was the first woman to ever dunk a basketball.
Yes.
Like she paved the way for the LA Sparks.
It was just, it's ultimate. Like, it's so many people who made an impact in the sports world. It's kind of just so broad. You really can go on with this debate for days.
Because it's like it's different for each sport. It's different. Like for baseball, you probably could say Aaron Judge, like who's playing right now. Like he could be one of the best right now. You got NFL, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, all of them. It's like, but it's a lot. So many guys that play at a high level. It's kind of hard to choose who's really the GOAT.
Right.
And do you think you could place almost like a time on like a sports GOAT of a decade? Like you could say Michael Jordan was the sports GOAT of his decade, and then Kobe Bryant was of his decade. Do you feel like you could place it for every 10 years? There was one sport GOAT in each sport.
I would say so.
Yeah, because like right now it's like it was LeBron's. Like he was the face of the league. Like what he was able to do his career, he was a GOAT. But now you're seeing like younger guys like John Morant, like
You're seeing
Giannis.
the new generation come in is what you're seeing. And obviously going on later in years, you're going to see somebody that's new, and then that's going to, at that time, I feel like people like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant will always be known. But I feel like over the years, they are going to not necessarily be forgotten, but they're going to be forgotten when people are breaking their records.
Because I won't be surprised when you see Luka Doncic be one of the premier players of the league, or even John Morant, like what he's able to do for his team.
That's the ultimate players that you're seeing now. Ja, Luka, Zion. Now that he's back, Darius Garland, guys like they're just a new generation. Like, not saying that they're pushing LeBron and those guys out the door, but the league is in very good hands as far as basketball-wise. Even NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Parsons.
You got so many guys like you could put Alvin Kamara like in the coverage of what he was able to do. And even though he wasn't drafted high, what he was able to do for the Saints, like you can't match that a lot.
Well, and now how like there were certain athletes that went into the major leagues and then went into professional sports, didn't have to go to college, just
Right.
like
Oh, yeah.
Michael Jordan, different places like that, and different people. Do you feel now that they've put that you have to go to college in order to go to like the NBA or professional league at all, just so they can say like you've had these certain things you've had to achieve to be able to get this title?
Personally, I would think you should stay in college for a little bit and then go to league, because like once the league, I would like to have, like, you would think they want to have a career after the league. And I think that you should at least stay at least 1 or 2 years to develop your game more, and then if you like, then you go to the league. Like if you're already there and you're at the level where it's a little, like for instance, Victor, what's his last? I forget his last name. That he is playing at a high level right now. He's gonna be one of those players that come from straight out of high school and stuff.
Well, I'm so glad I've been able to speak with y'all today, and we've seen what y'all each think on this topic. But that's all I have for this time. We are ending this segment on A-State Sports Take. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.